Chapter 216. Yang Feng took out a black seed and flicked it, and it flew into the earth. He silently recited an incantation, pointed at the black seed, and cast the Level 1 spell, Extraordinary Plant Catalysis. A green magical radiance directly entered the black seed. The black seed suddenly gave birth to countless transparent roots, which plunged into the earth and frantically extracted the nutrients in the earth. One could faintly see traces of a red substance being extracted. The black seed germinated and grew rapidly. Under the power of the spell, it grew into a 5-meter-tall tree. On the tree, there were watermelon-sized fruits hanging strangely from the branches. It looked like they would fall to the ground if the wind blew. Yang Feng cast Mage Hand and pulled forcefully, pulling a watermelon-sized fruit from the tree branch. He slapped the fruit with his palm. The skin and a layer of transparent liquid splashed, revealing a blood-red, steel-like fruit in the center. Yang Feng looked at the blood-red, steel-like fruit, and his eyes flashed with a scorching glint. Divine Blood Steel. This is one of the top materials for forging legend rank secret treasures. With Divine Blood Steel, as long as there are enough materials, I can manufacture a large number of legend rank battle robots. The black seed was called Power Purification Seed. It was an extraordinary plant cultivated by a genius Starry Sky warlock who was proficient in extraordinary botany in the Tyrannid subcontinent. In order to solve the predicament of the land polluted by the blood of experts fighting in ancient times, he carefully cultivated it. This power purification seed could survive in areas polluted by the blood of formidable beings, absorb the residual power of the blood of formidable beings, and condense it into a magic mineral. If it was an area polluted by divine blood, it would give birth to Divine Blood Steel. If it was an area polluted by demonic blood, it would give birth to Demonic Blood Steel. Whether it was Divine Blood Steel or Demonic Blood Steel, both were top materials for forging legend rank secret treasures. The land where the power of divine blood was sucked away would be purified and become fertile land. The reason why there were no scorched lands left behind by the fierce battles between gods and fiends in the Tyrannid subcontinent was due to the existence of this power purification seed. However, due to the long passage of time, there was no need for them. The number of these seeds gradually declined, and they were almost extinct. Yang Feng had also found a few such seeds in Black Dragon Pagoda's collection room, and then unceremoniously took them for himself. Originally, he planned to use it in the Great Cloud Dynasty, but he didn't expect that by chance, he would use it in the Feisua Plains Red Earth Wasteland. Yang Feng took out the legend rank dagger sharp dagger, stabbed the red fruit, operated his power, erupted with the life force of a level 2 warlock in a flash, and cut open the red fruit inch by inch, revealing the 19 black seeds inside. When Yang Feng saw the 19 black seeds, he revealed a smile and pressed the dimensional badge on his chest, and countless mechanical locusts flew out, pounced on the purification tree, and gnawed at the fruits growing on it. The fruits were gnawed clean by the mechanical locusts and fell from the tree, revealing the red flesh. The tree of purification purified the red soil within a radius of 10 meters, turning it into fertile black. At the same time, 10 watermelon-sized fruits were formed. Yang Feng obtained 10 balls of 50 kilograms of Divine Blood Steel and 190 purification seeds at once. After repeating this action 9 times, Yang Feng obtained 10 balls of Divine Blood Steel and 1,881 purification seeds. Yang Feng pressed the dimensional crest on his chest, and a dense swarm of mechanical bees flew out. With the 1,881 purification seeds in their mouths, they planted them every 20 meters, and then entered the farmland he had planned. After all the purification seeds were planted, Yang Feng flipped his hand, took out the legend rank magic staff rain scepter, pointed it at the sky, and unleashed the legend rank meteorological spell torrential rain descent attached to the rain scepter. A green magic radiance entered the sky, and the water elemental particles in the sky were immediately attracted from all directions and condensed into dark clouds. The dark clouds stretched for several kilometers, and before long, light rain began to fall from the sky. Yang Feng looked at the sky and mused, sure enough, the power of water magic cast in such a place with thin water vapor isn't satisfactory. The might of different spells cast in different environments was completely different. An ordinary magician would not even be able to cast a fireball under the water. Even among legendary mages, few could cast a fireball underwater. In some places with thin elemental particles, even spells couldn't be cast. This was the limitation of wizards. Wizard pagodas, warlock pagodas, and such existences can absorb the drifting elements in space and converge them inside the elemental pool. Therefore, the might of the spells cast inside the warlock pagodas is much greater than that of the spells cast in ordinary places. In the Red Earth wasteland, rivers, lakes, and ponds were completely extinct, and the water elemental particles were extremely thin. The might of the legend-rank meteorological spell Torrential Rain Descent was reduced to a pitiful level. That's Master Ian casting a spell. Amazing! To be able to call the wind and summon the rain, Master Ian is really amazing. In the Miracle City, when the slaves saw the rain, they cheered and their worship of Yang Feng increased. Clive looked at the rain in the sky, revealed a smile, and said full of joy, "So powerful! Master Ian." Lena's eyes flashed with a glint of worry, but even Master Ian can't cast such a spell every day, right? With such a powerful spell, I'm sure the price one has to pay is also greater. Under the nourishment of the rain, the purification seeds slowly grew roots and pierced the earth. When their roots pierced the earth, they began to absorb the power of the remnant divine blood and began to grow frantically. Purification trees immediately grew, bloomed, and bore fruit. In one breath, they purified more than 200 acres of extremely fertile black earth. A maid came up to Lena and said, "Madam Lena, Master invites you." Lena nodded slightly and followed the maid towards the agricultural area designated by Yang Feng. This is black earth. Black earth that can be freely cultivated. For thousands of years, the Red Earth wasteland, which had never been conquered by anyone, was actually conquered by Master Ian. This is simply a miracle. When Lena entered the agricultural area and saw the more than 200 acres of black earth, her beautiful eyes flickered with endless shock. She was even more shocked than when she saw the Miracle City that night. Located at the junction of the four empires, the Red Earth wasteland was extremely vast, even reaching 2/3 of the area of the Morin's Empire. Many ambitious and ruthless people wanted to establish a foundation in the Red Earth wasteland, but ultimately failed to conquer the stubborn Red Earth, and could only leave with their tails between their legs. The gods in the starry sky had the power to purify the Red Earth. However, purifying the Red Earth required them to consume a lot of divine power and energy, which was far from being as simple and easy as purifying the purification seeds. Besides, the gods were busy enjoying themselves, practicing cultivation in seclusion, comprehending laws, and strengthening their divine countries. Who would be willing to condescend and consume a lot of divine power and energy to purify the Red Earth wasteland's divine blood? With a flick of his wrist, Yang Feng threw a pouch and a knowledge crystal to Lena. "Lena, these are breadfruit tree seeds. Go and organize people to plant the breadfruit tree seeds. This is a knowledge crystal for planting breadfruit trees. Crush it immediately." "Yes, sir." Lena crushed the knowledge crystal and felt a lot of knowledge enter her mind. After a good while, she respectfully saluted Yang Feng and said. Yang Feng left and arrived before an artificial lake with a diameter of 1 kilometer and a depth of 30 meters, with a hill in the center. Due to the legend-rank spell Torrential Rain, a shallow layer of water had accumulated at the bottom of the artificial lake. Yang Feng flicked his fingers, and the seeds of the purification seeds that had just been harvested flew into the artificial lake. As soon as the seeds of the purification seeds came into contact with the water, they gave birth to countless roots, took root in the artificial lake, and began to purify it. After the entire artificial lake was purified, Yang Feng's figure shook, and he arrived at the top of the hill. He took out green seeds, threw them on the top of the hill, and then silently recited an incantation and cast the level 1 spell Extraordinary Plant Catalysis. Under Yang Feng's spell, the green seeds grew rapidly. Each of them grew into a 10-meter tall huge tree with countless glistening emerald green leaves. Countless water elemental particles converged from all directions and condensed on the leaves of the huge tree. When the wind blew, raindrops fell from the leaves of the huge tree and fell to the ground. This huge tree was an extraordinary plant called rain tree. It had a special characteristic, that was, it could absorb water elemental particles from all directions, condense them into water droplets, and then let the water droplets fall to the ground like rain. This rain tree was most suitable to lock the water elemental particles in the Miracle City. As long as the water in the Miracle City wasn't moved too far away, it could absorb the water elemental particles, condense them into rain, and then sprinkle them into the super large artificial lake. Of course, to fill the super large artificial lake, it wasn't enough to rely on the rain tree alone. It was necessary to draw a steady stream of water from other places and fill the super large artificial lake. In the red earth wasteland, where water elemental particles were scarce, the rain tree could only lock in water. Chapter 217. Yang Feng looked at the rain trees, and the corners of his mouth rose into a smile. The problems of water and food have been solved. The bread tree seeds Yang Feng took out were also improved extraordinary plants. Bread trees planted on an acre of land could be harvested 3 times a year, with 4,000 kilograms of bread flour harvested from the bread trees each season. On the Feisua plain, the wheat yield of an acre of land could be harvested twice a year, with the yield of each harvest being only about 200 kilograms per mu. If there were natural or man-made disasters, then the yield would be even lower. Yang Feng took out a vial of elixir and downed it, then closed his eyes, operated a secret method, clenched a top-notch magic stone in both hands, and absorbed the magic energy inside. After a while, he recovered his spirit and physical strength. The resilience and endurance of bloodline warlocks with black dragon blood meridians were far superior to those of the same rank. The only weakness that wasn't a weakness was that the evolution potential was too small. If one didn't take the path of faith and ascended to godhood, then after reaching the Starry Sky warlock rank, there would be no way forward. Yang Feng opened his eyes, his figure shook slightly, and he disappeared. In a blacksmith shop of the Miracle City, dozens of blacksmiths were forging all kinds of ironware in full swing. Blacksmiths were the most popular type of people among slaves, especially in the Beastman Empire, which lacked ironware. Every year, a large number of blacksmith slaves were smuggled from the human kingdoms due to the lack of ironware. The human empire repeatedly issued orders and formulated many cruel and strict laws, yet they still couldn't stop the powerful slave merchants from turning many blacksmiths into slaves and smuggling them into the Beastman Empire. The dozens of blacksmiths were gifts to Yang Feng by the slave merchant leaders in order to curry favor with him. "Esteemed master, may I ask what brings you here?" A burly middle-aged man with a shaved head and a wheat-colored body that looked like it was plated with a layer of oil walked towards Yang Feng and asked. Yang Feng handed a piece of divine blood steel to the burly middle-aged man. "Bando, can you process this or?" Bando was the leader of the dozens of blacksmith slaves as well as the most outstanding blacksmith in forging weapons. Bando took the divine blood steel, only to feel the weight in his hand. He squeezed it slightly, and his face revealed a trace of graveness and joy. "Good steel. This should be a legendary magic metal. I'm not confident, but I can give it a try." After that, Bando put the piece of sacred blood steel directly into the stove and burned it crazily. In the burning flames, the divine blood steel gave off a bright light and showed no signs of melting. With the passage of time, Bando's eyes gradually dimmed. Finally, he took out the red pincers from the furnace. Looking at the still dazzling divine blood steel, he smiled bitterly and said, "Sir, this is definitely an extremely powerful magic metal that we can't process at all. I'm afraid that only the legendary dwarven craftsman can refine this kind of magical metal." On the Feisua plain, there were also dwarves. Dwarves' smithing skills were unparalleled in the world. On the Feisua plain, many legend-rank weapons were forged by dwarves, and even a few semi-divine armaments were forged by dwarves. According to the legends, the dwarves had even dabbled in the domain of the gods and created divine artifacts. However, there was no clear proof. On the Feisua plain, dwarves were a weak race, and the god of dwarves paladin was a neutral god. They wouldn't easily get involved in the wars between powerful divine systems. Yang Feng flicked his finger, and a knowledge crystal flew into Bando's hand. This is the knowledge crystal of the smithing skill I've mastered. Crush it and then try again. Bando crushed the knowledge crystal, and suddenly, a large amount of smithing knowledge poured into his mind, making his eyes flash with ecstasy. Bando opened his eyes and gave Yang Feng a grateful look, and then said with a bitter smile, "Master, thank you for your generosity in bestowing me with this knowledge. However, after all, I'm just an ordinary human blacksmith. Without tools, I can't process this magic metal." Yang Feng smiled faintly and waved his hand, and a set of secret treasure rank stove, bellows, hammers, iron blocks, and other secret treasures required for smithing appeared in the room. Bando looked at the set of secret treasure rank forging secret treasures and said in a trembling voice, "Are these the legendary smithing and enchantment items?" Yang Feng said, "That's right, give it a try now. The knowledge just now should contain knowledge on how to use these tools." Bando thought carefully for a while, and then tried out the secret treasures one by one. His movements changed from rusty to proficient. The enchantment items used magic stones as their power source. Even though Bando was just an ordinary person, but he could still use these secret treasures. After Bando skillfully started using the secret treasures, he picked up the piece of divine blood steel with a pair of tongs and put it into the stove. A white flame gushed out of the stove and fell on the piece of divine blood steel. The divine blood steel, which previously showed no signs of melting no matter how it was burned, finally began to turn red. Bando was overjoyed. He took out the piece of divine blood steel, put it on the iron block, raised the enchantment hammer, and mercilessly hammered it. Along with the sound of the hammer, the piece of divine blood steel finally began to deform. Under Bando's hammering, it transformed into a sword. Yang Feng smiled faintly, turned around, and left the smithy. Even though Bando had the knowledge Yang Feng gave him and used the power of the secret treasures, he could at most forge the piece of divine blood steel into the strongest and sharpest sword. If he wanted to enchant it with magic and turn it into a magic sword, he would still need Yang Feng's help. However, Bando could use divine blood steel to forge weapons and armor, as well as provide a batch of sharp weapons and sturdy armor for Yang Feng's troops to use. Yang Feng had a lot of things to do, so he naturally couldn't stay in a smithy and forge weapons. 3 months later, a huge merchant group of nearly 8,000 people appeared in the Red Earth wasteland and slowly moved towards the miracle city established by Yang Feng. In this huge merchant group, there were 3,000 guards and 5,000 human slaves. This huge merchant group was a joint merchant group formed by the slave merchants in the Reject City. Although the Red Earth wasteland was extremely barren and lacked water and food, but it was a transportation hub at the border of the 4 empires. However, it was a transportation hub at the border of the 4 great empires. In order to obtain greater profits, some human merchants would often take the risk to pass through here and head towards the 4 great empires. If the human merchants didn't become rich overnight, then they would become the feces of goblins, bugbears, ogres, and other bandits in the Red Earth wasteland. Although the Red Earth wasteland was extremely barren, but there were still some places where shrubs grew. There were still some edible and extremely sour berries in the shrubs. In addition, there were also some places that were less contaminated by divine blood. Although they were very unpalatable but could barely fill one's stomach, wild vegetables and potatoes could be planted. There were as many as 8,000 people in the joint caravan. In the Red Earth wasteland, no force could contend against such a terrifying force. When bandits saw this huge merchant group, they could only reveal covetous gazes, not daring to make a move. A city! Heavens, are my eyes playing tricks on me? There's actually a city there. A city, it's only been 4 months, yet he was able to build such a city here. Incredible! He actually succeeded. Only 4 months. When the merchants saw the city in the Wuxia plain, their eyes filled with shock and they commented spiritedly. Amazing as expected of a great wizard. Jim, one of the leaders of the merchant group, was also shocked by the majestic miracle city. According to the construction strength of the Feisua Plain, without tens of thousands of people spending a year or two, it was absolutely impossible to build such a majestic city. With several thousand slaves, it only took Yang Feng 4 months to build such a huge city, of which 1 month was spent on the road. Such a construction speed was simply a miracle on the Feisua Plain. Suddenly, a merchant's eyes widened and he cried out, "Trees! Heavens, great god of slave hunters! What do I see? A tree? Oh no, it's a forest!" A forest actually appeared in the red earth wasteland. Is this a miracle of a true god? Trees. That's a forest. Heavens, there's a forest here. Trees. That's a forest. The merchants were dumbfounded as they stared at the forest and cried out involuntarily. Some merchants rubbed their eyes in disbelief and then stared at the purification trees that appeared in front of the miracle city. They were dumbstruck, and it took them a lot of effort to accept this fact. Jim's eyes widened and he cried out, "Trees? Are these real trees? Heavens, who the hell is Master Ian? How could he plant trees in the red earth wasteland? That's something that many legend heroes haven't done." For ordinary people, it was almost impossible to build a city in the red earth wasteland. However, on the Feisua Plain, many legend heroes have tried to build a city in the red earth wasteland and succeeded. But without exception, they couldn't sustain it and could only leave the red earth wasteland. If the two most important factors, water and food, couldn't be resolved, it was impossible to maintain a city in the red earth wasteland. Even if there were mountains of gold and silver, they would be spent on water and food. Establishing a city was not profitable, and it was even more impossible to develop and grow. But now, a forest had appeared outside the miracle city. This meant that at least this part of the red earth wasteland was no longer a plant-forbidden zone, and it was possible to grow food and other crops. This was of great significance to the conquest of the red earth wasteland. Chapter 218. Under the stimulation of the green trees, the incomparably huge merchant group immediately sped up their pace and rushed towards the forest. During this time, the red earth wasteland stretched as far as the eye could see. The green woods, as if an oasis had appeared in people's minds, nourished their minds and gave their taut nerves a trace of moisture. It was already lunchtime. Wisps of smoke rose from the green woods. The slaves working in the woods began to gather together to have their meals. Heavens, white bread! These lowly slaves are eating white bread and potato soup. Damn it, these lowly slaves, how can they eat white bread? Aren't they eating better than me, Lord Bai? Is there any justice in this? White bread! What a waste! It's such a waste to give these slaves white bread. Master Ian, it's such a waste. When the leaders of the slave caravans broke into the woods, they were attracted by the fragrance and went to the place where the slaves were having their meals. When they saw the slaves eating white bread, the eyes of many leaders of the slave caravans turned bloodshot and they screamed bitterly. On the Feisua Plain, the staple food of the middle and lower-class commoners and slaves was the extremely coarse, hard as wood, and needed to be soaked in water to be able to be eaten. As for the fragrant, soft white bread made from finely ground flour, only wealthy merchants and aristocrats could afford to eat it. Some abject aristocrats even had to yield to reality and eat black bread with their families. There were a lot of misers among the leaders of slave caravans. Some leaders of small caravans ate black bread every day. Now that they saw Yang Feng's slaves gnawing on white bread, their eyes at once became bloodshot. When the guards of the slave caravans saw the slaves eating white bread, their eyes couldn't help but turn bloodshot as well. The guards of the slave caravans basically ate black bread and drank water. Now that the slaves were eating better than them, it naturally made them feel very unbalanced. Jim stared at the white bread, then looked at the miracle city in the distance, and his eyes flickered with endless greed. Master Ian is so rich, even the slaves can eat white bread. What if I take people and seize the city? I have 3,000 people in my hands, and he only has a few hundred slaves. Even if it's a battle of attrition, I can use up all of his spell slots. Seize this city and offer it to His Majesty the Emperor. Who knows, Jim, might be able to become a noble lord. Basically, none of the Rijek slave traders were good people. When they were in Rijek City, they could barely be considered law-abiding. But once they left Rijek City and came to the unrestrained wilderness, they became the most terrifying vicious beasts. Every year, many small slave caravans would disappear into the wilderness without a trace. For Jim to have such great power in Rijek City, it was unknown how many small slave caravans he had swallowed up. Jim, keep your men quiet. Clive walked out of the forest with 400 fully armed warriors. He frowned slightly and berated Jim. Jim looked at the awe-inspiring, spirited and powerful Clive. His gaze fell on Clive's fingers, and his pupils constricted. The redness in his eyes faded, and he smiled amiably. Clive, I'm so happy to see you. It seems that your body has been completely healed by Master Ian. Master Ian, you're really amazing. That's right. 200 of my brothers and I have recovered our full strength under Master Ian's treatment. Not long ago, a group of more than 2,000 wolf riders came to ambush us. In the end, Great Wizard Ian single-handedly killed 1,000 wolf riders. If they hadn't run away fast enough, I'm afraid that all the wolf riders would have died here. Their corpses are hanging over there. Do you want to take a look? Clive operated a secret method, and a terrifying Sky Knight rank chi erupted in an instant. The powerful aura oppressed Jim to the point that he couldn't breathe. He looked at Jim with a smile that wasn't a smile. Clive knew better than anyone what kind of people those slave traders were. If you were stronger than the slave traders and offered them enough benefits, then you would be able to do it. Then, they would be your most loyal dogs. But once you showed a trace of weakness, they would turn into a pack of jackals and pounce on you. Jim's pupils shrank slightly. He showed a gratified smile and said shamelessly, amazing. Master Ian is really amazing. Clive, you have to thank me. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have met such a good person like Master Ian. Moreover, I didn't mistreat you and your brothers when you were with me. Clive and the 200 soldiers of the Amon Principality were valuable goods. Jim naturally didn't mistreat them. If they were raised to look haggard, sallow, and emaciated, those noble ladies wouldn't like it. Clive said with a faint smile, I really should thank you for that. But now, take your men into the city. Jim said without batting an eyelid, all right. By the way, do all the slaves here eat white bread? That's too extravagant. Clive said, not really. Jim breathed a sigh of relief. The fact that a mere slave could eat almost as much as a big merchant like him made him feel a little unbalanced. Clive said, only the slaves who work hard can eat white bread. Those who are lazy can only go to another place to eat black bread and water. Jim's face twitched slightly. The expressions of the leaders of the merchant groups that surrounded them didn't look good. Their living standards were only the same as those of the hard-working slaves in the Miracle City. The faces of some of the leaders of the small merchant groups were even darker. They basically ate black bread every day and only ate white bread on holidays. Their lives were simply worse than that of slaves. Of course, that was also because they were too stingy. The guards of the merchant group all had dark expressions on their faces as they considered the possibility of jumping ship. The slaves, on the other hand, all revealed expressions of anticipation. Jim asked curiously, isn't the Miracle City short of food? If we feed the slaves white bread like this, will the food be able to last? The leaders of the slave merchant groups also pricked up their ears. In particular, the merchants who transported the food were extremely nervous. As if awaiting trial, they waited for Clive's answer. Clive replied proudly, the great Master Ian cast a spell to purify part of the Red Earth wasteland. Now, the land can be used to plant breadfruit improved by him. The breadfruit trees can be harvested 3 times a year, and each season, 5,000 caddies of breadfruit, non-bread flour, can be harvested from 1 mu of land. Furthermore, the land planted with breadfruit trees can also be mixed with some potatoes, sweet potatoes, and other crops. From now on, the Miracle City can be completely self-sufficient in food. The leaders of the slave merchant groups inhaled a breath of cold air, and their eyes flashed with astonishment. The merchants who transported the food had sullen expressions on their faces and were so depressed that they almost wanted to cry. Jim's eyes turned and he said with a smile, "Can I buy some breadfruit tree seeds? I can buy them at a high price." As a merchant with a keen sense of smell, Jim perceived the great strategic value of the breadfruit tree seeds at once. Once breadfruit trees were popularized, it would have a huge impact on the entire Feisua plain. Clive said with a smile, "I'm sorry, but I'm not in charge of these things. You can go discuss it with Lena or Master Ian." Under the escort of 400 warriors commanded by Clive, the huge slave caravan directly entered the Miracle City. As soon as he entered the Miracle City, Jim saw the wide and orderly streets of the Miracle City. On both sides of the streets, there were trees giving shade, and there were many exquisite buildings. The streets were paved with a layer of cement. People came and went, yet there was not a trace of garbage or excrement of humans and animals. The whole city looked neat, clean, and beautiful. Jim sighed from the bottom of his heart. What a beautiful city! Master Ian is really amazing. Not only does he have formidable magic strength, but he is also a master in designing cities. I think the Imperial capital can't compare to the Miracle City in many aspects. Randy looked around and sighed. It really can't be compared. I've been to the Imperial capital before. Apart from the aristocratic district and the Imperial City district, the rest of the districts are covered in dust and excrement of livestock and humans. When it rains, you can't go outside without wearing rain boots. This is the city where the upper-class people should live. The leaders of the huge slave merchant group were Jim and Randy, the two most powerful slave merchants in the Reject City. That's a lake. I'm not mistaken, right? That's a lake. Suddenly, Jim's eyes flickered, and he pointed into the distance and said in a trembling voice, "A lake? My God, that's really a lake. How is that possible? How could there be a lake in the Red Earth wasteland?" The merchant leaders also looked in the direction that Jim's slightly fat and short finger was pointing at, and their eyes were filled with astonishment. After the War of Gods, due to the contamination of divine blood, it was difficult for plants to grow in the Red Earth wasteland. The climate also slowly changed. The water vapor was thin, and there were only a few times a year when it rained. It was impossible for there to be a lake in the entire Red Earth wasteland. Even if a lake was artificially made, due to the arid climate, the water vapor would evaporate and eventually turn into a dry, dead lake. But now, there was a huge lake in the Miracle City, which was simply heaven-defying. Chapter 219. A lake. What a big artificial lake. Randy sighed with a voice filled with complicated emotions. Then he exchanged glances with Jim. Located at the junction of the four empires, the Red Earth wasteland could be used as a commodity trading hub of the four empires. Throughout history, who knew how many ambitious and ruthless people had their eyes on this place? However, due to the lack of water and food in the Red Earth wasteland, in the end, no hero was able to establish a foothold here. But now, Yang Feng purified a large amount of land, opened up farmland that could grow food, and created a huge lake, solving the biggest problem of water shortage in the Red Earth wasteland. It was already foreseeable that the Miracle City would soar in the future. Jim looked at a neatly leveled plot of land with signs inserted in it, and asked curiously, "What are those places?" Clive said with a smile, "The Miracle City is located at the junction of the four empires. It can become a commodity trading hub of the four empires. These plots of land are for the chambers of commerce that will settle in the Miracle City in the future. These plots of land are not cheap, each of them is worth more than 100,000 gold coins." When the leaders of the small merchant groups heard that, they were first delighted, but then withered. For these small merchant groups, 100,000 gold coins was still too much of a burden. The eyes of the leaders of the medium and large merchant groups lit up, revealing a trace of excitement as if they had spotted their prey. With the speed of development of the Miracle City, it would definitely grow stronger and stronger in the future. Besides, transnational trade had always been the most profitable business. The Miracle City, located at the transportation hub of the four empires, would definitely become popular in the future. Clive said with a smile. Master Ian has already spread the news through other channels. Reportedly, some merchants and aristocrats of the Morin's Empire and the Titan Empire are very interested in the Miracle City. When they heard that, the leaders of the merchant groups no longer hesitated, and their eyes flashed with determination. Jim suddenly regretted asking such a question. With this question, he gained countless competitors in an instant. Sir Commander Clive, can you let us take a look at these plots? Sir Commander Clive, please let us take a look at these plots. The leaders of the merchant groups said passionately. Looking embarrassed, Clive pondered for a while, and then agreed, all right. The leaders of the merchant groups immediately poured into those plots, their eyes filled with greed as they searched for their favorite plots. Even Jim twisted his fat body and dove into those pieces of land with an agility that didn't match his figure. His eyes shone with greed as he searched for the piece of land he liked. As long as he bought a piece of land, he could definitely sell it for a large sum of money in the future. As for the delivery and collection of the slaves, the leaders of these merchant groups handed it over to their subordinates. Although the divine priest of the god of contracts was expensive, once the contract was signed, both parties were unlikely to violate the power of the god of contracts. After a few hours, the leaders of the merchant groups regrouped and headed towards the city lord's mansion under Clive's escort. Tony! Sapphire Commerce Group's Tony. As soon as Jim entered the reception hall that was specially used to entertain the leaders of the merchant groups, he was slightly taken aback, and his pupils shrank. There were already more than 200 people gathered in the reception hall. All of them were well-dressed and had rich faces. Jim didn't know most of them, but the few he knew were big merchants of the Morin's Empire. Tony of the Sapphire Commerce Group was a person in charge of a territory with wealth no less than that of Jim's super merchant group. With a glass of red wine in his hand, Tony came over with a smile. Jim, Randy, you're really not good friends. Since you found such a big business opportunity, why didn't you call me? It's really disappointing. Jim's chubby face trembled and he said with a smile, Tony, didn't you go to the Blue River Manor for a vacation? I couldn't get in touch with you for a while, so I didn't call you. By the way, what's the origin of those people? Tony smiled and didn't pursue the matter. He looked at the rest of the people, his eyes flashed with apprehension, and he whispered, many of those guys are barbarians from the Titan Empire. The people of the Morin's Empire and the Titan Empire basically called each other barbarians. Numerous wars had broken out between the two empires. However, neither empire could do anything to the other. Jim asked with a puzzled expression, how did those barbarians get the news? Tony replied, someone went to the Titan Principality and released the news that a person called Master Ian established a miracle city in the Red Earth Wasteland and that there was a huge business opportunity. Furthermore, he swore in front of the clergyman of the god of contracts that everything he said was true. The stray dogs were attracted. Jim sighed slightly and said with some regret, it seems that our Master Ian isn't simple. The power he wields is far beyond our imagination. If there were no competitors, Jim and the other caravan leaders could still join forces to negotiate with Yang Feng. But once the merchants of the Titan Empire came, Jim's caravan would have no chance of joining forces. Although merchants had no borders, but the people of the Morin's Empire and the Titan Empire looked down on each other. Jim had no friendship with the merchants of the Titan Empire, so there was no way for them to join forces. The merchants of the Titan Empire also stared coldly at Jim and the others. In the tavern, there were clearly two large groups. In addition, there were also some merchants from other lesser principalities who came to take risks, but they didn't amount to much. At this moment, Yang Feng slowly walked in from the side of the tavern. All eyes focused on Yang Feng. Thank you for attending this banquet. I am Ian, the master of the Miracle City. Yang Feng looked at the hundreds of merchants from the Morin's Empire, the Titan Empire, and some lesser principalities, and the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Arts did a good job. Yang Feng's words had just fallen when bursts of applause sounded in the tavern. You must have seen the plots of land that the Miracle City is going to sell. I am confident that within 10 years, the Miracle City will be built into a giant city with a population of more than 500,000 people. Besides, this place will become the trade hub of the 4 empires. Every inch of the land will be worth its weight in gold. If you have a plot of land you like, you can pick up a pen and paper next to you, write down the plot of land you like and the price you are willing to pay, and then put it into the black box. The Miracle City will immediately do a calculation, and the land will go to the highest bidder. Yang Feng clapped his hands, and beautiful maids filed out from both sides with smiles on their faces, each holding a black box in their hands. Jim smiled bitterly and sighed in his heart, "What a ruthless move. In this way, if you want to buy the plot of land you like, you can only offer a high price." The surrounding merchants picked up a pen and paper and began to write down the plot of land they wanted to buy. Jim pondered for a while, then took a piece of paper, wrote down the plot of land he wanted to buy, and threw it into the black box. Standing on a dais, Yang Feng watched this scene with a smile on his face. Just by selling the land, Yang Feng made a huge profit. Moreover, when the merchants bought the land, they would have to construct it and make use of it, which would attract many workers. With more people, the consumption rate would slowly rise, forming a huge virtuous cycle. Although Yang Feng brought a huge amount of wealth to the Feisua plain, but if the Miracle City only allowed people to enter and not leave, then he wouldn't be able to support it. A grain merchant couldn't help but ask, "Master Ian, your Miracle City already has a food source. What about us grain merchants in the future?" Each of the breadfruit trees improved by Yang Feng could produce an astonishing amount of food. The grain merchants were worried that they wouldn't be able to make a living in the future. Yang Feng responded with a smile, "Don't worry. Within 2 years, according to the price I agreed with you, you can transport as much food as you have. I'll take it all, as long as there's no problem with the quality." The population of the Miracle City would only increase, so it wouldn't be too much to stock up on food. 2 years after the Miracle City was fully developed, Yang Feng would still need to import a lot of food. The grain merchants heaved a sigh of relief and revealed a smile on their faces. The merchants wrote down notes and threw them into the black boxes, which were then collected by the beautiful maids. By the way, let me tell you another piece of good news. I'm not only a wizard, but also an alchemist. Recently, I've refined some gadgets in my spare time, so please come and have a look. Yang Feng clapped his hands, and a warrior walked in with a fine steel sword. Yang Feng said with a smile, "Please elect a few people to take a look at this fine steel sword to prove that I haven't tampered with it." The merchant groups of the Morin's Empire and the Titan Empire quickly elected 10 highly prestigious merchants, including Jim, Tony, and Randy, to go on the dais. After carefully examining the fine steel sword, Jim waved it a few times, and then said very cautiously, "There's nothing wrong with this fine steel sword. It's an excellent imperial military sword. This sword has been maintained very well. There is no damage to it." The other 9 people took the sword and carefully examined it for a while, and then nodded in agreement. Chapter 220. Military standard fine steel swords weren't inferior swords. On the contrary, they were well-made and of excellent quality. Compared to the scimitars and swords used by many adventurers, they were of much better quality. The quality of military weapons had always been far superior to that of civilian weapons. "This is an enchanted sword I forged. Give it a try, Jim." With a flick of his wrist, a sword with a thin blade engraved with mysterious runes appeared in Yang Feng's grip, and he handed it to Jim. Jim took the sword and waved it slightly. A pale green magic radiance and a pale red magic radiance buffed Jim's body, making him feel lighter. At the same time, there seemed to be endless power surging out of his body, causing him to reveal a trace of ecstasy. "These really are magic weapons. My body has been blessed with 2 spells, increasing my agility and strength." The eyes of the merchants of the 2 empires turned bloodshot and flickered with endless greed as they stared at the magic sword in Jim's hand. On the Feisua plane, due to the weave, it was easier to cast spells than on other planes. However, it was dozens of times more difficult to search for the source of spells. Apart from the Weave Church and a few ancient mage organizations, there weren't many alchemists to be found, and magic items were few and far between. Once the magic sword in Jim's hand was put up for auction, it would definitely fetch a sky-high price. Yang Feng said faintly, "Reggie Qi." The warrior Reggie urged his qi and poured it into the standard sword in his hand, causing the standard sword to radiate qi radiance. According to the understanding of warlocks, qi cultivated on the Feisua plane was a powerful life force that could be used to strengthen various weapons and armor. Yang Feng said with a smile, "Jim, chop at the tip of the sword. Wait a moment, let the others test the sharpness of the sword." With the magic sword infused with a dozen grams of divine blood steel, Jim chopped at the tip of the standard fine steel sword of the Morin's Empire and easily cut off the fine steel sword blessed with qi. Seeing this scene, the merchants all sucked in a breath of cold air. They were shocked by the sharpness of that magic sword. Magic swords were just long swords that could be enchanted with magic. They were not necessarily sharp enough. That magic sword could already be regarded as a peerless sword that could cut through iron as if it were mud, even without being enchanted with magic. Now that it could be enchanted with magic, it could be said to be a heaven-defying sword. The magic swords collected by many noble families were only of this standard. Jim fondled the long sword admiringly and exclaimed in ecstasy, "Good sword, what a sharp treasured sword." "Jim, get out of the way. Let me try." Randy pushed Jim away impatiently, snatched the magic sword from Jim's hand, and slashed at Reggie's steel sword that had been strengthened with combat energy. Ding! With a crisp sound, the fine steel sword in Reggie's hand was sliced off. Randy's eyes also revealed a trace of excitement. "Good sword, it's indeed a peerless sword." Tony's eyes lit up and he snatched the magic sword. "It's my turn." The 10 merchants took turns to try out the magic sword and praised it profusely. Even though the magic sword could no longer be enchanted with magic by the 5th person, but they were still very satisfied. To be enchanted with 8 level 0 spells a day, to be extremely sharp, and to be able to cut through iron as if it were mud, such a treasured sword was definitely a rare treasure. I name this treasured sword Warrior's Edge. Every year at this time, I hold an auction here and auction 5 of these treasured swords. If you're interested, you can come and participate in the auction at this time every year. Yang Feng smiled. With a flick of his wrist, 5 Warrior's Edge appeared in his hand. Lena came over with a smile on her face, took the 5 Warrior's Edge sheathed in an exquisite scabbard, handed 4 of them to a maid behind her, and looked around, saying, "I am Lena, the Miracle City's Internal Affairs Manager. I will now be acting as the auctioneer. The starting bid for this Warrior's Edge is 100,000 gold coins, and each bid increment must be no less than 1,000 gold coins. The auction begins now. 150,000 gold coins." Just as Lena's words fell, Jim impatiently quoted a high price. Hearing the sky-high price, the venue went silent for a while. At the time, Yang Feng had bought hundreds of slaves in the slave market for tens of thousands of gold coins. For a magic sword, Jim offered a sky-high price of 150,000 gold coins, which shocked everyone. A middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire said flatly, 300,000 gold coins. Hearing that voice, everyone was shocked, and the venue went silent. Lena said with a smile, 300,000 gold coins going once, 300,000 gold coins going twice, 300,000 gold coins going thrice. Sold, this magic sword is yours. Numerous gazes were focused on the middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire, and their gazes were filled with complicated emotions. 300,000 gold coins was definitely not a small sum. For the middle-aged merchant to be able to take out so much liquid funds without batting an eyelid, he was definitely someone from a super large merchant group. Lena said with a smile, "The auction for the second Warrior's Edge will now begin. The auction rules are the same as before. The auction begins now. 110,000 gold coins. 120,000 gold coins." Just as everyone was quoting prices, the middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire still said flatly, 300,000 gold coins. The entire venue went silent once again, gazes full of complex emotions and hatred focused on the middle-aged merchant. Lena said with a smile, 300,000 gold coins going once, 300,000 gold coins going twice, 300,000 gold coins going thrice. Sold, this magic sword is yours. Lena said with a smile, the auction for the third warrior's edge will now begin. The auction rules are the same as before. The auction begins now. 300,000 gold coins? Just as Lena's words fell, the middle-aged merchant directly opened his mouth, blocking the desire of those merchants who were trying to increase the price. Jim hesitated for a moment, his gaze fell on the two remaining magic swords, and he gritted his teeth and quoted a price. 310,000 gold coins, 320,000 gold coins, 330,000 gold coins. The atmosphere in the venue seemed to be ignited at once. The price of the magic sword rose steadily until it reached 500,000 gold coins, when it was bought by a wealthy merchant from the Titan Empire. The corners of Lena's mouth rose slightly, revealing a sincere smile, and she said, the auction for the fourth warrior's edge will now begin. The auction rules are the same as before. The auction begins now. The middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire quoted a terrifyingly high price in an attempt to deter the rest. 400,000 gold coins, 410,000 gold coins, 420,000 gold coins. The price of the warrior's edge suddenly rose steadily. Without stopping, it directly broke through 500,000 gold coins, all the way to 610,000 gold coins, when it was bought by the red-eyed Jim. The corners of Lena's mouth rose slightly, revealing a sincere smile, and she said, the auction for the last warrior's edge will now begin. The auction rules are the same as before. The auction begins now. A merchant from the Titan Empire, his eyes bloodshot, directly quoted a price. 600,000 gold coins. This magic sword, which could cut through iron as if it were mud, was very popular in the martial Titan Empire. Many greater aristocrats liked to collect such peerless swords. If they could meet a bigwig who liked this kind of sword, it would be normal for it to reach 1 million gold coins. The poor of the Feisua plain were very poor, but greater aristocrats of the various empires could even afford to raise tens of thousands of private soldiers. Such peak greater aristocrats were not short of money. Such a peerless sword could definitely help those big nobles recruit top powerhouses such as Sky Knights and Heavenly Knights. Randy's eyes were bloodshot as he said, 610,000 gold coins. Tony also directly went all out and roared, 650,000 gold coins, 700,000 gold coins. The competition for the last warrior's edge was extremely fierce. In the end, it was bought by a wealthy merchant from the Titan Empire for the sky-high price of 800,000 gold coins. At this time, the gazes of the greater merchants focused on the middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire, their gazes brimming with admiration. The middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire had a very unique vision. At the beginning, he bought the two magic swords at a sky-high price in the eyes of the greater merchants. Now it seemed that the middle-aged merchant from the Titan Empire had made a fortune. His profits had nearly doubled. Lena said with a smile, Master Ian is also a Grandmaster Pharmacist and can refine a variety of potions. When you come next year, you should be able to buy a variety of mystical potions at the auction. I think that you won't be disappointed when you come next year. Grandmaster Pharmacist. After hearing this, the greater merchants inhaled a mouthful of cold air. They looked at Yang Feng as if they were looking at a gold mine emitting the radiance of gold coins as it walked. Potioneering was also a branch of magic. On the Feisua plain, because wizards would forget the spells they memorized the day before, they had to memorize spells repeatedly, wasting a lot of time. Therefore, there were very few wizards who studied potioneering. Every kind of magic potion had mystical powers. Some magic potions could dispel many curses. Some magic potions could curse others. Some magic potions could inflict strange poisons that even divine spells would find difficult to dispel. Some magic potions could restore youth for a short period of time. Some magic potions could restore people's energy. Every kind of magic potion was a rare treasure. Generally, only the royal families of empires as well as some greater aristocrats had some magic potions. Just a magic potion could make the miracle city in the Red Earth wasteland a holy land in the eyes of many people. They had come from far away. Chapter 221. Yang Feng said with a smile, "Presumably, everyone knows that what the Miracle City lacks the most is people. Henceforth, if anyone brings 500 slaves to the Miracle City alive, you can buy a magic elixir from me. Of course, I'll also give you a satisfactory price for those slaves. I won't let you come empty-handed." The middle-aged merchant of the Titan Empire, who spent 300,000 gold coins to buy the 2 magic swords, stood up and said, "Master Ian, I'll return to my country and organize the supply. I'll definitely satisfy you." Yang Feng said with a smile, "If you satisfy me, I'll also guarantee that you'll be satisfied. Master Ian, don't worry, I'll go back and organize the supply." "Yes, I'll also go back and organize the supply." The merchants who came from all over the world were very excited and shouted loudly. The banquet came to a successful end. "Amazing! Just the 5 magic swords have earned us more than 5 million gold coins. Master, you're really amazing." Inside a room, Lena stood behind Yang Feng, massaged his shoulders, and said with a look of worship on her face, "More than 5 million gold coins, this was definitely a huge sum of money. It was enough to buy all the slaves and various supplies brought by the Rijek City's allied merchant group, and still have a lot left over." Yang Feng said with a faint smile, "How much was the land sold for?" Lena looked at Yang Feng with a look of worship on her face and said softly, "A total of 21,680,000 gold coins. That piece of land with nothing on it could be sold for so many gold coins just by sticking a sign on it." Lena couldn't quite believe it. After all, the land was worthless before. Yang Feng sighed somewhat regretfully. "Unfortunately, the sale price was too low. The price is still a bit low. If it wasn't for the sake of quickly attracting more merchants to stay in the Miracle City, Yang Feng wouldn't have sold the plots so easily. Real estate was a windfall among windfall profits." Lena's eyelids twitched, and she was somewhat speechless. The prices marked on the plots of land were already astonishingly high in her opinion. But listening to Yang Feng's tone, the plots of land were sold cheaply, which made her somewhat incredulous. Yang Feng's eyes flashed with a peculiar glint, and he mused, "With so many gold coins, and the time is almost up. We must start preparing for the next step." 50 miles to the west of Miracle City, under a flat red land, it had been excavated and built into an extremely spacious, 100-meter-deep underground base. The underground base was filled with all kinds of mysterious runes that were used to block all kinds of probing. Even if it was a god-level powerhouse, they would have to use their incarnation to personally come to this area and use their divine power to see through the underground base. A level 1 mobile fortified stronghold was built 100 meters underground. Although the Mechanical Legion couldn't appear on the Feisua plane, but the huge computing power of the portable fortified stronghold's optical computer and the ability to synthesize all kinds of elixirs were what Yang Feng needed. Yang Feng reclined in the chair of the portable fortified stronghold's main control core and raised his head to look at the sky. In the air, pictures of beautiful female half-blood beastmen kept flashing, and below those pictures were their resumes. The corners of Yang Feng's mouth rose slightly. "Based on all the information, it's her." The projection also stabilized in midair, revealing a beautiful blonde woman with a pair of lion ears. At the same time, her eyes were burning with unyielding fury, making her an unforgettable sight. The Red Earth Wasteland was located at the border between the Kasama region and the Beastman Empire. In the Beastman language of the Feisua Plain, Kasama meant hybrid. In fact, the Kasama region was a place that the Beastmen despised as a hybrid area. The land in the Kasama region was extremely barren, and could only produce some sour and unpalatable berries, potatoes, and some unpalatable roots. There was a kind of people living in the Kasama region, and they were hybrids between beastmen and humans, half-blood beastmen. In fact, half-blood beastmen were the product of a tragedy. Once the 2 human empires invaded the territory of the Beastman Empire, they would plunder many beastman beauties. When the Beastman Empire's armies invaded the territory of the human empires, they would also be merciless and plunder a large number of human beauties. Half-blood beastmen born under this tragedy weren't regarded as compatriots by humans and beastmen, but as filthy and sinful existences. According to the customs of the Beastman Empire, once half-blood beastmen were born, they would be directly thrown into the Kasama region and abandoned. The half-blood beastmen in the Kasama region would silently accept the newborn half-blood beastmen as their compatriots. As if cursed by the gods, the offspring of half-blood beastmen and other races would also be half-blood beastmen. The offspring would be treated with contempt and even hostility by the many races of the Feisua plain. Behind a hillside in the Kasama district, there was a half-beastman girl with golden hair and blue eyes. She had a golden ponytail and was about 1.85 meters tall. Her breasts were almost bursting out of her clothes, and her legs were slender and beautiful. Her appearance was very beautiful, but she had a heroic aura. She was about 16 or 17 years old, and she had a pair of lion ears. She held a wooden sword in her hand and continuously brandished it. Drops of sweat slowly dripped from the forehead of the half-blood beastman girl, nearly drenching her clothes. Even so, she didn't slack off in the slightest. She practiced a set of the most basic swordsmanship. Even that set of swordsmanship was incomplete, but she still did not give up. She chopped, flicked, stabbed, lifted, and slashed with her sword. Every sword move was extremely serious, enough to make many martial arts practitioners blush with shame. Suddenly, the face of the half-blood beastman girl turned pale, her breathing stagnated, and she spat out a mouthful of blood that sprinkled on the ground. The set of swordsmanship was incomplete. The half-blood beastman girl practiced this set of swordsmanship so hard that she unknowingly injured herself. Without the guidance of a great teacher, it was extremely difficult to practice swordsmanship. At the time, although Yang Feng had the inheritance of the Black Cottage, but he still went to great lengths to join Warlock College Antalya in order to get the guidance of a great teacher and a huge amount of cultivation resources. A 12 or 13-year-old half-blood beastman girl with a sallow complexion, a pair of cat ears, and slender limbs that looked like they could be easily snapped ran over and said with a look of horror on her face, "Big Sister Catherine, it's bad. So many wolf cavalrymen are attacking our village." Catherine's pretty complexion changed, her eyes flickered with endless anger, and she gritted her teeth and said, "Wolf cavalrymen? Is the winter hunt starting so soon? Those bastards!" The so-called winter hunt was when the beastmen of the Beastman Empire would sweep through the Kasama region from time to time during winter. They would plunder the food of half-blood beastmen and capture the beautiful half-blood beastmen for their own enjoyment, or sell to human slave merchants in exchange for various supplies. Because many half-blood beastmen were the offspring of handsome men or beautiful women, they were generally not ugly. Although they couldn't compare to elves, who were all handsome men and beautiful women, but the proportion of beautiful women was still much higher than that of humans. Half-blood beastman female slaves were also very popular among humans. Whether it was the Beastman Empire or the Human Empire, they had never regarded half-blood beastmen as their compatriots. Therefore, when it came to killing half-blood beastmen, they didn't show the slightest bit of leniency. It was as if they were harvesting chives, harvesting one batch after another. Catherine's eyes almost spewed flames of anger, and she said while stressing each syllable, "Little Sister Kitty Kitty, hide here. I'm going to find a way to rescue Aunt Gina and the others." Without waiting for Kitty 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 to reply, Catherine tightly grasped her only weapon, the wooden sword, and rushed towards the hillside. Once she rushed out of the hillside, she arrived at the small mountain village where Catherine lived. At this time, huge wolves could be seen running amok in the small mountain village. Many of the huge wolves were biting and chewing on the half-blood beastmen in the small mountain village. Blood splattered everywhere, and the entire mountain village was filled with screams and wails. The humanoid werewolf warriors were dragging the half-blood beastman women in the mountain village, laughing wildly and humiliating them without the slightest scruple. "You beasts!" When Catherine saw the miserable scene that resembled hell on earth, anger surged in her heart. She waved the wooden sword and stabbed at a werewolf warrior. There's a beautiful chick here. This time, we really struck it big." If we catch her and sell her, our family will have food to last through the winter. The werewolf warrior had the cultivation base of a senior warrior. His eyes lit up and he laughed heartily. He swung the scimitar in his hand, and with a casual shake, he sent Catherine's wooden sword flying. He reached out and grabbed Catherine's head, and just like that he forcibly pressed Catherine to the ground. No matter how Catherine struggled, she couldn't break free from the werewolf warrior's grasp. And a lion race half-blood beastman, huh? Maybe one of your parents is a member of the royal family. I can't take it anymore, I'm going to F***CKU now. This way, I can also play with a half-blood beastman with royal bloodline. You might even be the daughter of a prince or princess. The werewolf warrior smiled malevolently and began to tear off Catherine's clothes. His eyes were filled with undisguised lust. But why did the heavens do this to us half-blood beastmen? But we didn't do anything wrong. We didn't come to this world of our own free will. Why are you doing this to us? Catherine's eyes were bloodshot, and she howled mournfully. 2 streams of blood tears flowed down from her resolute and courageous eyes, showing that she was already at the peak of grief and indignation. Since Catherine could remember, this hellish scene had been repeating over and over again. This filled her heart with the desire to become stronger and caused her deep pain. Now, she was almost in despair. Chapter 222. Good child, you half-blood beastmen aren't wrong. What's wrong is that you half-blood beastmen don't have a god protecting you. Along with a slight sigh, Yang Feng, shrouded in sacred light, stepped into the void and walked over, looking like the embodiment of a god walking in the secular world. When Catherine saw Yang Feng walk out midair, it was as if she saw a glimmer of hope in the depths of a dark and despairing hell. The eyes of the wolfman warrior flashed with a glint of graveness. He grabbed Catherine and threw her aside, then faced upwards and issued a shrill howl. Enemy attack. The other party is a human wizard. The wolfman warrior had just issued a shrill howl, when Yang Feng took a step, appeared in front of it, and a sword ray flashed at its neck. What a fast sword! The last thought flashed in the mind of the wolfman warrior. Immediately after, its head flew high, and a mouthful of hot blood sprayed out of its body. The drops of blood sputtered towards Yang Feng, but were ricocheted after coming into contact with the life force field protecting him. Not a single drop of blood stained him. The wolf cavalrymen were battle-hardened elites. After hearing the warning of their comrade, they immediately picked up their weapons and ran towards their battle wolves. Yang Feng flicked his fingers, and the level 0 spell arcane projectiles bombarded the heads of the wolf cavalrymen like raindrops. When the wolf cavalrymen were hit in the head by the level 0 arcane projectiles, as if hit by a heavy hammer, they bled from their facial orifices and fell to the ground. The eyes of a dozen huge wolves flickered with a sinister glint. Their figures flashed, and they madly pounced at Yang Feng. When the dozen-plus wolves appeared in front of Yang Feng, he blurred into motion. Instead of retreating, he charged into the wolf pack and slashed at the wolves with the secret treasure sword forged from divine blood steel in his hand. After a dozen grams of divine blood steel were added to an ordinary fine steel sword, it could slice through iron as if it were mud. The secret treasure sword forged entirely from divine blood steel was extremely sharp. Wherever the sword rays passed, the hard bones of the huge wolves were easily sliced apart as if tofu. The sword rays interweaved, and the dozen huge wolves were turned into countless pieces, with blood spraying everywhere. So strong! Is he a god who has come to save us? Catherine's beautiful eyes reflected Yang Feng's figure, her heart brimming with excitement and worship. In her still slightly immature mind, a powerhouse like Yang Feng was a top powerhouse in the world, and gods were nothing more than this. When the wolf cavalrymen saw how terrifying Yang Feng's strength was, they immediately howled, mounted their giant wolves, and scattered. Yang Feng creased his eyebrows slightly when he saw the wolf cavalrymen flee in all directions. He cast spiderweb to trap 8 of the most ferocious wolf cavalrymen, and then stopped his pursuit. The biggest advantage of the wolf cavalry was their high mobility. If they couldn't beat them, they would choose to escape. It was very difficult to annihilate them. Catherine got up and stared at Yang Feng. After hesitating for a moment, she gritted her teeth and asked, "Sir Wizard, are you here to capture us?" Over the years, the people that appeared in the Kasama district were either human slave hunters or the ferocious beastmen winter hunt army. Kathleen asked with a hint of fear in her voice. Catherine knelt in front of Yang Feng. Her beautiful eyes flashed with a touch of unswerving determination, and she implored, "If you want to capture us, then capture me. I can be your slave, and I can also be your test subject. I only beg you to let the other people in our village go." Yang Feng looked at the sensible half-blood beastman girl who was willing to sacrifice herself, sighed slightly, and reached out to help her up. "Good child, get up. I'm not here to capture you. I'm just a great wizard Ian who pursues the truth and walks on the path to godhood. If you want to obtain enough power and knowledge to protect your people, to prevent half-blood beastmen from being humiliated, to stop being called bastards, and to live with dignity on this land, come to this place to meet me tonight." Yang Feng pointed with his finger, a ray of light entered Catherine's forehead, and a message was imprinted in her mind. Yang Feng handed Catherine the sword forged from divine blood steel in his hand. His body collapsed, turned into countless specks of light, and disappeared. When Catherine saw Yang Feng disappear before her eyes, she became absent-minded. If she hadn't seen the sword in her right hand, she would have thought that everything was a dream. When Catherine's gaze fell on the 8 wolf cavalrymen bound by spider webs, her eyes practically spurted flames of anger, and she strode over. At this time, the remaining dozens of half-blood beastmen of the half-blood beastman village gathered together, staring at the 8 wolf cavalrymen with eyes full of hatred and fear. A wolf cavalryman bound by spider webs glared and threatened fiercely, "Fuck! You lowly bastards, why don't you let us out right now? If anything happens to me in your village, our Copper Wolf tribe will definitely send soldiers to slaughter all the people in your village." Yi Zichen thought. "Even the dozen villages around you are no exception. Let us go and we'll spare your lives." The eyes of the remaining dozens of half-blood beastmen flashed with a touch of fear. The brutal Copper Wolf tribe had massacred a lot of villages. Some of these half-blood beastmen had wandered into this village from villages that had been massacred. A middle-aged man with a pair of dog ears and an ordinary appearance hesitated for a moment before saying, "Let's release these few werewolf masters." Another half-blood beastman with wolf ears also hesitated and said unwillingly, "Yes. Let them go." The eyes of a somewhat good-looking young woman with a pair of cat ears flashed with hatred, and she screamed mournfully, "Don't let them go. Kill them. These bastards let their giant wolves eat my husband and child. I want these bastards to pay with their lives. I can't let these bastards off. Are you still men? These bastards had their wargs eat our people. They bully and humiliate our women. You still want to let them go? Are you still men? Are you still human?" When they heard the hoarse roar of the cat-eared young woman, the half-blood beastmen lowered their heads, and their eyes flashed with shame and helplessness. The eyes of the middle-aged man with a pair of dog ears teared up, and he almost shouted, "Human! Are we half-blood beastmen still human? In the eyes of everyone in this world, we half-blood beastmen are just slaves, natural slaves. I also want to be a dignified person. But we were born to be slaves, this is our fate. Do you want to implicate the lives of dozens of people in our village in order to vent your anger? Besides, those dozens of villages are hundreds of lives. The dead are already dead, but we still have to live." When they heard the tragic words, many half-blood beastmen wept with tears in their eyes. They also wanted to be human and live with dignity, but the whole world of the Feisua Plain rejected them. The whole world thought that they were bastards, natural slaves. They wanted to resist, but they didn't have the power to. No one would teach half-blood beastmen magic and martial arts. Without knowledge and inheritance, they could only fall behind. They didn't even have the power to resist. One of the wolf cavalrymen trapped in the spider web spat out a mouthful of saliva and sneered, "Tui! A lowly slave will always be a lowly slave. In this world, no one is a natural slave. As long as we don't think of ourselves as slaves, then we will never be slaves. These bastards must die. With the sword forged from divine blood steel in hand, Catherine walked over from the side, took a step forward, and slashed at the wolf cavalryman. A sword ray flashed, and the wolf cavalryman, who was extremely arrogant a moment ago, was cut in two. Its sinister head revealed a trace of astonishment. It never expected that it would be killed by a half-blood beastman like Catherine. Before anyone could react, Catherine brandished her sword and killed the 8 wolf cavalrymen one by one. The blood gushing out of the wolf cavalrymen splashed all over her, making her look full of a heroic, bloody, and bewitching temperament. She looked like a goddess of war who killed her way out of a sea of blood. With a look of horror on his face, the middle-aged half-blood beastman knelt on the ground, shivered, and accused with grief and indignation, "Catherine, you killed them. You actually killed them. It's over, it's over. It's over, we're screwed. We're screwed." The strength of the Copper Wolf tribe isn't something we can resist. That human wizard doesn't appear at any time. He just acted on a whim and saved us. But he can save us for a while, but he can't save us forever. Now that you've killed these 8 werewolf masters for a moment of pleasure, you've sown the seeds of calamity for our village. When the half-blood beastmen saw this, they were both delighted and afraid, not knowing what to do. From the bottom of their hearts, they naturally wanted to kill the 8 ferocious wolf cavalrymen. But when they thought of the consequences of killing the 8 ferocious wolf cavalrymen, they were terrified. Catherine's beautiful eyes blossomed with radiance, and she barked, "Have you ever thought about why we half-blood beastmen are so miserable? We were born to be regarded as slaves, and can be hunted and killed wantonly like livestock." The half-blood beastmen fell silent. They had been pondering this question since they were born, but they hadn't come to a conclusion. Catherine said loudly, "That's because we half-blood beastmen don't have a god of our own. Without the protection of a god, we are bullied and humiliated. Not long ago, a great god was finally willing to take pity on us half-blood beastmen, and sent an emissary to help us. That human wizard is a divine emissary sent by that great god to save us half-blood beastmen." Chapter 223. Interesting. This Catherine is really outstanding. She can adapt to the situation. I just gave her a little poke and she could react like this. That's amazing. Every race has its geniuses. She should be a half-blood beastman genius. If there is a Bolu, then there is a horse. Horses are common, but Bolu is rare. It's quite interesting to be a Bolu. Above the clouds, sitting on the magic carpet, Yang Feng looked at the holographic scene projected by the holographic projector, and the corners of his mouth rose into a smile. The middle-aged man with dog ears was taken aback, and then whispered, "Is there really a god willing to take pity on us half-blood beastmen?" Expectant and hopeful gazes focused on Catherine at once. Catherine's thoughts revolved, and she said loudly, "That's right, the name of the great god is Ian. He will send a divine emissary to guide us half-blood beastmen out of our predicament and no longer be slaves to others. We half-blood beastmen are not natural slaves." "Great. That's great. Thank you, great god Ian. Praise you, great god Ian." The half-blood beastmen praised loudly with tears streaming down their faces. Pure faith power diffused from them, and then gradually dissipated because they couldn't find a target to attach to. In the sky, Yang Feng cast a secret method and looked at the faith power that appeared and then collapsed and dissipated from the half-blood beastmen, and he sighed slightly, "What a strong faith power. I'm afraid that each of them has reached the pinnacle of shallow believers and is infinitely close to true believers. Suffering is really the best way to harvest faith power." Believers were divided into 6 classes: non-believer, pseudo-believer, shallow believer, true believer, fanatic, and saint. In addition to non-believers, even pseudo-believers would provide a trace of faith power when they silently recited prayers. Under normal circumstances, with the same prayer time and the same soul strength, the faith power provided by 100 pseudo-believers was only comparable to that provided by 1 shallow believer. The faith power provided by 100 shallow believers was equivalent to that provided by 1 true believer. The faith power provided by 100 true believers was equivalent to that provided by one fanatic. The power of faith provided by 100 fanatics was equivalent to the power of faith provided by one saint. Of course, if a creature's soul was strong enough, then the power of faith they provided would also be stronger. Therefore, there were many species that did not have a lot of numbers, but their individual souls were strong enough. Their gods were also very powerful. The half-beastmen race had suffered a lot. Without the protection of the gods, they were one of the most vulnerable races. Yang Feng chose half-blood beastmen because this race, which had suffered hardships, was more likely to give birth to devout believers who could provide large amounts of faith force. In the plain of Tyrannid subcontinent, those vampires were being hunted by humans. They also suffered a lot. They were full of pious hope to give birth to a god of the vampires. That kind of strong obsession made most of them existences above the level of true believers. Coupled with their soul strength that far surpassed that of ordinary people, they were able to allow the Blood Clan King Reri to ignite his divine fire and evolve into a demigod. Under Catherine's reassurance, the half-blood beastmen began to clean up the village and bury their loved ones. At the same time, they skinned the giant wolves and began to cook them. Although the giant wolf meat was not tasty, but it was rare meat that they could obtain. Time passed slowly. The sky had just turned slightly dark. Catherine took the sword forged from divine blood steel and quickly went to the place where she and Yang Feng had agreed to meet. After arriving at the place, Catherine began to practice the swordsmanship that was full of mistakes under the weak moonlight. This was the only martial art she could learn. Don't practice it. You're practicing the wrong swordsmanship. If you continue to practice it, you'll only ruin your body. Under the weak moonlight, Yang Feng, shrouded in a faint sacred radiance, slowly walked out from the side. Master Ian, thank you very much for saving the people of our village. Catherine prostrated herself on the ground, kowtowed 5 times, and expressed her thanks to Yang Feng. This was the highest form of thanks given to her by a former slave by a half-blood beastman. Yang Feng said, "Get up." Catherine stood up at once, looked straight at Yang Feng with a clear and firm gaze, and said, "I want to get enough power and knowledge to protect my people, so that half-blood beastmen will no longer be humiliated, no longer be called bastards, and can live with dignity on this land. Please teach me what to do. I'm willing to pay any price. As long as I have it, you can take it. I'm a wizard who pursues the truth and walks on the path to godhood. I need you to become the pope of my church and spread my faith among half-blood beastmen. Half-blood beastmen who are willing to believe in me and don't violate my doctrine will receive my protection. Half-blood beastmen who receive my protection will receive food that can be preserved fruits, clean water, a safe residence, and live with dignity. Anyone who tries to capture you will be my enemy. My army will tear those enemies to pieces. Catherine, are you willing to become the pope of my church and spread my faith among half-blood beastmen? This is a path full of thorns and sacrifices. I alone won't be enough. I need the entire half-blood beastmen to continuously struggle and make countless sacrifices. Only then will there be hope for success." Shrouded in sacred light, Yang Feng spoke slowly like the embodiment of a god. "I'm willing," Catherine said without hesitation. Half-blood beastmen were discriminated against on the Feisua plain, with no one passing on knowledge about power to them. Now that someone finally got an opportunity, they naturally wouldn't let it go. Yang Feng extended his hand, and a knowledge crystal appeared in his hand, which flew towards Catherine. This is a knowledge crystal that can be practiced until the demigod rank martial art Lion King battle scripture. Crush it, and you'll master this martial art. Yang Feng didn't lack secret methods that could be practiced until the Starry Sky Warlock rank. In the Tyrannid subcontinent, the 6 great warlock groups all had secret methods that could be practiced until the Starry Sky Warlock rank, and there were even 3 secret methods that could be practiced until the Moonlight Warlock rank. However, the 3 secret methods that could be practiced until the Moonlight Warlock rank were all ancient secret methods. The requirements were too high, and he couldn't achieve them. The Lion King battle scripture was one of the 3 secret methods that could be practiced until the Moonlight Warlock rank. This was a secret method that human warlocks learned from the Fesua Plains Beastman Divine System's lion god Arketh and then improved upon it. This was one of the reasons why Yang Feng chose Catherine, a lionman half-blood beastman girl. Kathleen reached out and grabbed, directly crushing the knowledge crystal of the martial technique. That was the secret technique of the Lion King battle scripture. The next moment, it entered her mind. Not long after, a huge phantom of a lion suddenly appeared behind Catherine, emitting a powerful pressure. This was the power inherited from her bloodline, and now, it was finally stimulated by the Lion King battle scripture. When Yang Feng saw this, the corners of his mouth rose slightly. Not bad, the power of her bloodline is beyond my imagination. It seems that either her father or mother is a divine descendant with God's bloodline flowing through them. I've struck it big this time. Catherine let out a roar towards the sky, and a wave of war lion chi gushed out from her body. Her figure flashed, and she executed a complete set of Lion King fist technique in the open space. Boom! After Catherine executed the complete Lion King fist art, she finally slammed her fist into the ground and blasted open a small fist imprint. Catherine's figure shook slightly, and she arrived in front of Yang Feng. Her beautiful eyes were filled with adoration and gratitude. Thank you, sir, for teaching me the Lion King battle scripture. Catherine will never forget your kindness. Yang Feng smiled and flicked his finger, and another knowledge crystal flew into Catherine's hand. The Lion King battle scripture is the signature martial art of lionmen of the Beastman Empire's royal family. Except for lionmen, the effects of cultivating it aren't good for other people. I'll teach you the radiant battle text. Any beastman can cultivate this martial art. If you cultivate it to the pinnacle, you can become a legend rank warrior. Catherine alone wasn't enough to support the entire half-blood beastman race. Most people could cultivate an inherited martial art, which was the foundation for the prosperity of the race. Although the radiant battle text's grade wasn't as high as that of the Lion King battle scripture, but for the entire half-blood beastman race, it was much more precious than the Lion King battle scripture. Catherine crushed the knowledge crystal and memorized the radiant battle text's cultivation method. Then, she slowly opened her eyes and stared at Yang Feng. Although she didn't say any words of thanks, but her beautiful eyes were filled with unswerving determination. This is the Monarch Sword. It can bless you with 4 spells: Inspire Courage, Monarch's Dignity, Extraordinary Physique, and Monarch's Power. This is the Monarch's Armor. It has a formidable defensive power and is blessed with 9 spells: Warping Force Field, Fire Resistance Enhancement, Water Resistance Enhancement, Wind Resistance Enhancement, Earth Resistance Enhancement, Ice Resistance Enhancement, Light Resistance Enhancement, and Darkness Resistance Enhancement. The future of half-blood beastmen needs you to use these 2 weapons to forge it. With a flick of his wrist, Yang Feng handed Catherine a secret treasure sword forged entirely from divine blood steel and a secret treasure armor forged entirely from divine blood steel. In terms of material quality, the secret treasure sword forged entirely from divine blood steel already surpassed that of many legend-rank secret treasure swords. Its only shortcoming was that the magic attached to it wasn't strong enough. The same was true for the secret treasure armor forged entirely from divine blood steel. However, to the current Catherine, this was definitely a godly weapon-level treasure. Welcome to Legends of Cultivation audiobooks, where we bring ancient fantasy to life through storytelling. Follow the rise of heroes who defy fate, unlock mystical powers, and battle across celestial realms. Our audiobooks are crafted for fans of Chinese cultivation novels, filled with battles, breakthroughs, and legendary artifacts. Subscribe and be part of an unforgettable journey into the realm of immortality.